Alright, welcome back. In the last tutorial we set up a new sandboxed Oxygen Builder installation. So make sure you go back and do part 1 instead of starting here. So what we're going to get started with in this tutorial is how to create our templates. If we go and take a look at our website, you'll see it looks like an absolute mess. It basically has no style at all. And so we are going to start styling all of these different elements. So in Oxygen, we do this by creating templates. So there is a great guide to templates that you should definitely be aware of, and that's the templating overview, which is part of the documentation for Oxygen. I would certainly take a look at this because it'll fill in some holes that maybe I don't get to in my tutorials. But it's a really nice set of tutorials to be aware of. So let's get started here. I'm going to begin by creating a very simple template. This first one is going to be my catch-all template. And the reason I call it catch-all is because if we go down to other, that's what it's called, is catch-all. Now what catch-all does is that means it'll work for everything in the entire website. Now typically what you need to do is give it a name, choose what it is, and then hit publish. Once you've hit publish, then you'll have the ability to edit this with Oxygen. Now as I open this thing with Oxygen, sometimes it does take a little bit of time. That's one of the things about Oxygen you might find. It's a little bit slower to initialize than some of the other builders, but just waiting a little bit doesn't really matter because it's so powerful, it's totally worth it. Now you'll notice here on the left I have basically a blank, or here on the right I have a blank page, so there's nothing there yet. If I go over on the left, I can add all the different things that I need. For example, if I type in header, I can look for the header builder and I can click on it and add a header. Now with this header, I'll look at my structure and you'll see I have a header row and I've got 3 different things, left, center, and right. You don't have to put content in all of them, and you can add a second row if you want. So let's go on the first row. I might go ahead and say the background color of this is going to be red. I'm going to not worry about design in these tutorials, and in the next one I'm going to make it kind of a dark gray instead. Now do be aware, as soon as you've created some colors, you may want to assign these as global colors. So this is going to be dark gray. That red I've decided is really not a very pleasant color, so I'm going to choose a much more subdued color, and I'll call this red 1, or let's say header banner. So now inside here you can add anything you might want. So I can add some text, I can change that text to be white, and then I could put some padding around it if I want to. 10 pixels here, 10 pixels there. Now I'm putting this, by the way, on the text itself. If I decided not to do that, obviously I could delete that from there and there, and I could go back to the header row itself and I could add those here instead. So you do want to be aware of what you currently have selected and where that style is going to be applied, obviously. Now certainly we can go through more about how to use the header, but that's for another tutorial at some other point. So I would certainly go and find out more about, if you go and look at your documentation, you'll see more about your header styles there if you like. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go underneath this, go to add, and I'm going to go down to the library and find design sets. Now one of the most common design sets that you see being used is the atomic one, and that's because it's in the pre-built website. That's the style that they use. But if we decided to use maybe the B&B one, I could go ahead and open that up, click on sections and elements, and you'll see I even have a header that I can go ahead and then click on, and you'll see now it has that header applied to the page. That means I could get rid of these other headers that I created myself. If you want to undo anything, you have to undo. and I'm going to actually just take away that right there. Boom. I'm going to get rid of that. So I might keep my red one at the top for some reason. I don't know. I just decided to keep it. Now, the next thing that we need other than a header is obviously going to be a footer. So I might go to Add, I'll go to Footers, and then click on that, and you'll see that footer will now be underneath it. Whoop, looks like I was still on the top header, so I need that footer to be below. Now, do be aware one thing about this header and the footer. If I click on this header, well, it doesn't look like I get to change it here, but if I click on the footer, you'll see I could even change my tag to a footer as well. So that's just kind of a nice little feature. Now, in between this, we need to put what's called our inner content. So I'm going to click on Add, and I need to go backwards, and I could just type in inner until it says inner content, and I'll click on it once and you'll see inner content. Now this inner content I'm going to put in between my header and my footer. So there's my two headers, then my inner content, and then my footer. Now the inner content right now basically just says, hey, anything else that's in here, like I'm previewing a style guide, I could go ahead and put the contents of that inside this section. Now notice that I did not put it or inside this inner content. I did not put this inside of a section, so it's going full width at this point, but that's okay for what my needs are. So I've saved that, and now I'm going to go back to the admin, and you'll see once again that we have generated the shortcodes that we need for this particular template. And every once in a while this will happen where you create CSS items. So I'm going to go to my CSS cache. I'm going to turn off CSS caching while I'm developing this site, and I'll turn that back on later. I'll let it regenerate my global CSS, and I'm good to go. Now, what's happened, because we have this website, we now have our basic navigation, because we had a navigation menu there, and we're able to basically jump around to all of the different pages. But you'll notice that that content is filling out the entire width of that inner content. So we're going to come back to our templates, and we're going to create another template. This time I'm going to add a template for a single page. Single page. So I'm going to choose singular pages and hit publish. Now edit with Oxygen. Now with a single page, we're typically going to want that content to be constrained to just the inside part. And I'm not really doing a lot of styling in these tutorials. I'm really just trying to do structure. So I'm going to add, in this case, I'm going to add a section, and then inside that section I'm going to add that inner content. Now do be aware it didn't go inside the section, so I need to either drag that inside, and then I'm going to save this. Now I did make a mistake because I just wasn't thinking about it, but I'm going to go back to the admin and just take a quick look. What I forgot to do was inherit the design from catch-all. Once I've done that and hit update, let me go back and edit again. You'll now see that we get to see our header and our footer, and we have the content inside. So there's my header and my footer with the content inside, and once again our structure is all that we have is the section and the inner content. So we're doing that inner content again in this case. So I'll hit save again just to make sure, and now I'll go to the front end, and you'll see that basically all the pages that I go to now have exactly what I want. Now the blog right now is a blog archive, and it says that it will have all the categories of posts. So one of the things that of course we need to do that we didn't do are go to our reading settings in WordPress, because we need to go ahead and make sure that our static page is the home page and that the post page is our blog archive. So I'll hit Save Changes. Another thing we really should have done, because you do this on all sites, is make sure that you have the type of structure that you want. Post name will work just fine. I often use category in post name, but anytime you do change your permalink, make sure that you save those changes twice. Alright, so now let's go back to my site and look at that blog page. Now you'll see that I'm getting all the different blogs, but it's a complete mess once again. So we're going to change that. So we now have a catch-all template, we have a page template. Now we're going to go back to our templates and we're going to do an archive template. So let's do add a new template, and this is going to be the blog archive. So we'll do archives and we'll do all. Publish that. Oh, I always forget to make sure that we have the inherited design. Now I'm going to edit with Oxygen. Takes it a second. And here's where we can go back to that design sets. So if I pull this back up, come on. Reusable library, there we go. Design sets, we were in the B&B, I believe, sections and elements, and then here's my blog, and then we might be able to have an archive. Sample page, a restaurant, showcase nav. Well, I'm not really seeing an archive page, so I won't really worry about it. I'll just do it myself. So if I go backwards, I'll go to my helpers. Yeah, okay, it's what I thought. So there's a couple different ways to do repeating content. One is called easy post and the other one is called repeater. I'm going to go ahead and just use the easy post. So you click on easy posts, you'll see that I can tell it what to use, what style. It can use the grid standard, or it can use a gradient overlap, or you can use a masonry. There's lots of great little features about the way this thing works. And what's cool about all of these, I'll just use the standard gradient one, or the standard image one, is that you can actually go into the templates of all of these and edit that code. And that's one of the things that makes Oxygen so different from the other builders, is that you actually have access to the code behind how it's doing things, which means you can style this any way you really want. Now you can also style your query. We're using basically the default query here, so I'm not going to change that. We will look at how to change that in a future tutorial. So now I'm going to go back to the admin, and once again all I did was just assign that easy post, it's catch all. We're making sure this is for all archives. So now when I go and I look at that blog page, this is my archive page, and you'll see that everything is going full page. I didn't think about that too much. I didn't constrain it, which I probably should have done. So I come in, I edit that content, and you'll see, by the way, it's now purple instead of blue, and that shows you that it's currently being used as a template. Okay, so I'm going to add a section, and now I'm going to take this and put it inside that section. Should make it work a little bit better. Hit save, and let's go back and look at this again. So I click on blog, and you'll see there's my blog archive. Works really, really well. If you click on one of the elements itself, one of the blogs, obviously we haven't created a template for this. So now you have to go back to templates. Let's do add a new template, and we'll say this is a single post. So we're going to do a single post, and what's cool about this is you can also choose the taxonomy. I could say this is a single news post, or I could say this is a single Ipsums post. So it's really quite flexible. You can create very defined templates. I'm going to go ahead and just leave them for all posts for right now. I'll publish that. Edit. Whoops. Always forget to hit that button to inherit the design. Now that we have this single post, I might come back to the library, design sets, B&B, sections. This is the blog, and I might choose a single post. Now this has a lot of information that's happening here, so there's a lot to unpack on this particular page. So a couple of things real quick. If you click on this first thing, you'll see that it's created a section. So let's look at that. Here's the blog post. There's that first section. This section right here is using the background set to whatever is the featured image of the page. We actually do this by changing the data of this by going to Data, Featured Image, and then I can choose what size to make it, and I can even use a default image in there, which is great. And so that's how it's able to use the featured image inside here. Then we have our title. Let's look at this. So here's our heading. If we look at that, there we go. It's using an Oxygen data title, and we would do this by changing all this. I'm going to go ahead and delete that and go to Insert Data, Title, and then Insert. And you'll see that's how it does dynamic data in here. The next thing that we have here is some social icons. Then we have our metadata, and you can see for all of these we have some sort of Oxygen data equals date, Oxygen data comments dash number, and then this might be the author. And then we have our content right here, and that content is our Oxygen data equals content. So really easy to add all of that text right in there. And then of course anything that you might want to do, like social share icons, you can add as a short code or whatever else for this particular template. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and then go back to my admin and click on the most important thing, which is make sure that this uses the template for catch-all. Now what's great about this is now we have created basically a fully functional site except for our home page, which looks terrible at this point. But I'm going to go to my blog, and you'll see I can now click on one of my posts, and it will come up as a featured, it will come up using that template. So as you can see, Oxygen allows you to create really robust websites really quickly using these templating features. Once again, you definitely want to check out some of the other tutorials that are out there on how to do these templates more effectively, because they can get a little tricky when you're trying to do special things. Now, in the next tutorial, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our home page, and we're going to design a little bit more using Oxygen here, and we're going to look at how Oxygen uses IDs and classes and other things like that. So join me for the next tutorial.